That's pretty profound in light of today's news. Reince Priebus, McCabe told me Russia investigation was BS. Seems like a lot of lying going on between a lot of people. And Tom Fitton, well, where are Andrew McCabe and Comey's text messages? Well, that's a good question, too, or any emails that they might have had together. Joining us now, Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor. Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch. And, of course, we have this issue of Andrew McCabe and what's gone down earlier today, that the director met with the senior DOJ officials and making his final case to keep his job, which we don't think is happening at all. Sarah, what's the latest?
Well, the latest is that McCabe is making his case before the Department of Justice. It's part of the Office of Professional Responsibility. It's the process, part of the process that takes place when you're terminating an employee. I've spoken to a number of sources today. I've been told that he won't be able to make his case, that he will be terminated from his job. It'll be interesting to see what evolves from this meeting that took place. Look, I think McCabe, this is a small part. What we've seen here in recent reports, that he possibly misled investigators and that he was responsible for a leak to the Wall Street Journal, is just a sliver, I was told, of what will be coming out on McCabe and the Inspector General's investigation. This is only a very, very small part. So we have to assume right now, based on the recommendation from OPR, Sean, think about this. OPR, there's a lot of people inside OPR, they always investigate themselves, who are very close friends with McCabe, I've been told from my sources. So for them to make the recommendation that he be terminated, this was a recommendation not by the president, not by the DOJ. This was a recommendation by the FBI. To have him terminated is highly significant, and it means that possibly something more is there that we are not aware of right now.
But you also had a piece out today how the FBI is skirting an order to turn over McCabe's communications. And the other thing I think we've got to throw out here, I'm beginning to wonder, the only one that seems to be impacted at all by the pending IG report is Andrew McCabe. Now, I know that there are a lot of other people that should, in fact, be impacted by the IG report, assuming that the job was done correctly. If it was really an investigation into the exoneration of Hillary before an investigation. Remember, James Comey had said when he testified that he didn't make up his mind until after he talked to Hillary Clinton. That person that talked to her ended up being Peter Strzok, but he and Peter Strzok were writing an exoneration in May, and they never talked to her until July.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they're going to be looking at this going way back. This Inspector General's report, and I'm going to stress again, it's not just one report. These are multiple investigations that have been conducted by Horowitz. And I don't think the media has picked up on this yet. We've reported on this in the past on your show. These are multiple investigations, and very little has leaked out. McCabe will not be the only one named in these reports. You can bet that Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, Comey will all be named in there, among other officials. It would not surprise me if there has not been referrals for criminal investigations already. Now, remember, the Inspector General can look at the whole institution and see how that is operating and write this report. But if he finds any evidence of criminal wrongdoing, he would have to refer that to the DOJ for prosecution. So I don't think we will be surprised if something like that happens here. This was a very intensive investigation, and you're also right about those text messages, Sean. And I'm sure Tom Fitton will talk about that at length, because it was Judicial Watch who, along with Jeff Danik, had fought to get these text messages, emails, because it will reveal timelines of how things took place with McCabe.
Well, what about...
And, so far, they have not received those.
Well, what about that? And I thought you wrote a great column about it. And, Tom, you've done a terrific job with all these Freedom of Information Act requests, but the FBI still refuses to turn over, a court order to turn over the McCabe communications. And they waited to the last minute to turn over, the communications that ended up being inside the Nunes memo. Why do we have to wait a year every time we need some information? Why can't there be, instant cooperation?
It's par for the course. I mean, even this process that Sarah describes, they're waiting to the last minute to move against McCabe. They've been on notice for 6 weeks plus as to McCabe's misconduct in terms of allegedly lying about leaks, among other things. You know, we're representing a retired supervisory FBI agent, Jeff Danek, who asked for the text messages of McCabe. He knows where they are. He knows they can be gotten. And they've given us zero text messages from this FBI, and we've pushed back on them. And it's basically go jump in a lake. It's hard to describe the contempt and arrogance we're getting from the FBI on the McCabe text messages, on the Lisa Page and Peter Strzok text messages. We now know there are text messages about the tarmac meeting that were withheld from Judicial Watch. We said, well, what's going on there? And they said, we're not going to tell you anything.
That's unbelievable.
This is Chris Wray's FBI. Chris Wray, unfortunately, as FBI director, has been more concerned about protecting the reputation of the agency rather than cleaning out the corruption.
It really is unbelievable. I want to go back to the Inspector General report, Sarah, and your point about multiple investigations. And as it relates to what are the specific areas? We know the Clinton email server investigation of the investigation is going on. What else do we know?
Well, we definitely know that the entire aspect of the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server and her use of that to send classified information is being thoroughly investigated. And remember, they have to break that out into parcel and pieces. They're going to be looking at Comey. They're going to be looking at the tarmac meeting. They're going to be looking at decisions that were made. They are also going to be looking at insurance policy. Remember those text messages? What did that mean? What did you say by insurance policy? They're going to be looking at, and they are looking at, the interviews that were conducted with General Flynn, for example, by Peter Strzok, and his involvement with the Hillary campaign, and how he interviewed her and what his oversight over that, and McCabe's oversight over that, and when did McCabe actually recuse himself? I think Judicial Watch did a phenomenal job when they actually got those emails that reflected that McCabe never really pulled himself out of the investigation until a week before the elections. That was incredible, and that was important information.
All right, stay right there. We'll got to take a break. We'll come back, and then we have to ask about the dossier, and then we have to ask about the FISA abuses, and and of course we now have the informant in the Uranium One case. This never ends. All right, we'll take a break. We'll have more. Sarah Carter, Tom Fitton with us. All right, as we continue with Sarah Carter and Tom Fitton, a lot of new news today about Andrew McCabe. Looks like he's going to lose his pension. He was set to retire on Sunday, which is pretty amazing. What about the Mueller subpoena of the Trump organization demanding documents about Russia? What do we know about that today, Tom Fitton?
Well, it would just show that the Mueller operation continues to be out of control. It's now a year plus after almost a year after they initially, after Mueller was appointed. We still have no evidence of Russia collusion. I've called the Mueller investigation a zombie investigation. We just had the Republicans say the other day on the House Intelligence Committee, they reviewed the information. There's no evidence of Russia collusion. Why is Mueller still operating? I object to this process. I think the president should object more vociferously to the process because it's an abuse. There's no other investigation at the DOJ that has as much resources devoted to it than this Russia investigation. At least they're asking the Trump organization for information as opposed to going in and taking photographs of Paul Manafort's suits, going to the Seychelles and all over the Middle East, looking for anything they can get to bring Donald Trump down. This is a partisan investigation, and the bias we're talking about with Andrew McCabe, it is there present in the Mueller investigation. Andrew Weissman, the number 2, is an anti-Trump partisan, and the fact that he's still there, and the fact that Mueller had Peter Strzok removed and didn't tell anyone about it for 4 months just shows you how incredible this Mueller investigation is.
What is your take on that? Because what I had been hearing is that they were supposedly wrapping up and maybe had a few questions to ask the president, and that was the ongoing negotiation apparently between the president, his lawyers, and the special counsel. Sarah.
I think the president and I think they've been whistling past the graveyard as to thinking that this investigation is going to end, and the president needs to take strong action to object to the abuse of power and waste of resources.
Sarah?
What's happened here is now we're going to be seeing several months of continuous special counsel ongoings. I mean, investigations. They can't ask for all of these documents and then not research them thoroughly, right? So if they're looking for documentation from the Trump organization, imagine that. Imagine how long this is going to last. I would even suspect that this is going to go right into the midterm elections, and this is something that is very concerning. I think this is why, when we're asking for a special counsel for the investigation into the FISA abuse scandal, into what happened with the Hillary Clinton email server, whatever that may be, wherever they're going to take that, they've got to find somebody outside of Washington, somebody who has clean hands on both sides, somebody who neither the Democrats nor the Republicans will be able to say anything about. This is that important.
Yeah.
That important, because look at what's happening here. I mean, it's starting to look like a three-ring circus, and it looks like they're in search of a crime, which it appears that they're doing. We've never seen any evidence of Russia-Trump collusion, and we've seen the indictments against Paul Manafort and others,
well, there's nothing,
and Flynn, none of which have anything to do with Russia collusion. So now I think they're looking like they're in search of a crime, and that's a really big problem.
All right, thank you both, Tom Fitton and Sarah Carter. 800. We'll have more on this breaking news tonight on Hannity.